Hello everyone, welcome to the Strictly Broken TCG YouTube channel. My name is Ben, also known as Zistral, and I'm here today bringing you the Malkuth Malak deck profile. Now, contrary to the title, this isn't necessarily the best profile. It is, however, what I've been finding the most comfort and success with and what I currently have sleeved up, but I can also discuss some other options and how those interactions come about. So let's just look at the deck list first, and then I'll talk about the individual card choices and why we play some of them. So starting off, we have our trigger lineup, and it's pretty straightforward as you'd expect. There's 8 crits, 4 heals, and 4 draw PGs. Most decks in Standard nowadays are running this sort of lineup. There's not really much to say here, but there is something to discuss, which is the choice of Sentinels. Now, I'm playing draw PGs for 2 reasons. One is that I'm afraid of decks such as Luard, which, Sentinel crits don't really do much against, and you need that draw PG to defend against the big Morfessa turn. And secondly, I'm fairly unlucky, and so I like having some draw triggers in there, just so that I can find the Malkuth Malaks that this deck needs to find. However, I do believe that 12 crit and playing the crit Sentinels is a viable option, because it gives you that extra aggro pressure. And one thing that Malkuth is really good at is being an aggro deck and just taking wins in the early game. And so playing more crits let you hit your opponent more damage in turns 1 and 2, and that can maybe get them into a closer to death position when you ride grade 3. So there's an argument to both. Next we have the grade 1s, and there's a lot to discuss here. So we're playing 12 grade 1s, it's just 4. This entire deck list is just all 4s and then a 1-off. But the 4s exactly themselves can be discussed slightly. The first one is Nakir, which is the grade 3 searcher. This actually is more useful as the 13k booster more than anything. Like I said, this is an aggro deck in disguise. It's very good at putting bodies on the board, attacking your opponent 3 times, all of them with really good numbers. And being a 13k body that you have reliable access to through Malkuth Malak is really, really great. Especially if you revive it with Malkuth, in which case it becomes an 18k booster, plus your Protect 2s, plus whatever. So the numbers are what really makes this really great. And like I said, you want to be finding your grade 3 Malkuths as much as you can. So having the grade 3 search effect is really useful. Bear in mind, you don't actually want to find the Shin Malkuth that often with it, because you want the Shin Malkuth either through Persistence or Holy Road, which we'll discuss in a bit, but it's useful for finding the base Malkuth, and I think that alone makes it warrant a spot. The next grade 1 option is Scaling Angel. This has 2 really great effects. The first one is when you ride it, you can discard 1 to draw 1, so the free filtering is great. And the second effect is on Rearguard Circle. When placed, you can put a grade 2 from your damage zone to your soul, and then put a normal unit from your drop zone and put it into your damage zone. Now, it puts grade 2s or below into soul, but it can put anything from drop zone to damage, which means if you can't find your other grade 3 Malkuths, you can use this after soul blasting the original grade 3 Malkuths to put the grade 3 Malkuth into your damage zone, and then add it back with, say, Yafkiel or whatever. But this is, I think, to me, this is the weakest grade 1 of the 3 that we're playing, and it can definitely be adjusted, the ratios can definitely be moved around a bit. But you definitely want to play at least 11 grade 1s so that you can ride consistently. The last grade 1 that I'm playing is Persistent Angel. It's from Clan Selection. It's just really, really good. Soul Blast 1, draw 1, discard 1, and then you can put a Malkuth Malak from your drop zone on top of your deck, which guarantees you the re-ride when you take damage. And this is particularly good with Nakir, because what you can do is, in the early game, you can play the Nakir, you can add the Shin Malkuth, even though I just said that you don't always want to be doing that, then discard the Shin Malkuth, and then stack it with the Persistence Angel afterwards. So you draw 1, discard whatever garbage like the Quick Shield, and then put it on top with Persistence, which is really, really useful. The other option to discuss here is that if you don't want to play Persistence or you don't want to play Nakir, the best thing to go alongside Scaling Angel is Bellyful Meds. So her effect is she can put herself to the soul to damage swap from hand, with a card from damage with a card from hand. Named once per turn. It's a promo that we originally had in Japanese, and it's finally come out in English. So the reason you'd play this is to go with Scaling Angel, where you put your Malkuths from the drop zone into your damage, and then you use Bellyful to swap them from damage back to hand. That way you always have a Malkuth to re-ride next turn. You could play like 3-3-3-3 of all 4, but I wouldn't really recommend that because you don't have nearly enough consistency. Like, it's an aggro deck that's really good at pulling cards out from the drop zone, not at pulling cards out of the deck. So you don't actually have that much plussing. You have filtering through scaling and persistence, but when you're only playing 3 of stuff, the chance of you actually finding it off the top of your deck is much lower. So if you're going to commit to like, the Nakia Persistence combo or the Scaling Bellyful combo, I would commit fully to it in one way or the other. So that's the grade 1 options. Then moving on to grade 2, we have another set of 12, another 444. So we've got Holy Road, we have Amputation Angel, and we have Yathgiel. So Holy Road is the grade 2 from Clan Selection, Vanguard Rearguard, so both circles. When placed, look at the top 7, add up to 1 Malkuth Malak from them to hand, shuffle deck, then reveal up to 1 normal unit from hand and put on top of your deck. So it can either guarantee your Malkuth's damage on the reride, or it can just get cards out there. It can just add the Malkuth itself without needing to actually like put something on top. So it can be a raw plus if you so wish. It's nice to have. It's not super great because it's only on place, so it only really works once, and it doesn't really hit numbers, doesn't do anything else. But the fact that it's one of 8 pieces you have for setting up your guaranteed rerides on the Malkuth, I think is what makes it worth playing. Next is Amputation Angel. This is going to be your main beat stick. Her effect is that if you have a Protect marker in the same column as her, she gets 15k. And then if you have 3 Protect markers, your opponent can't use Sentinels on her battle. So she kind of acts like a mini Hamiel for this deck. Obviously, she's not as good as Hamiel itself because she doesn't gain a crit inherently, but she does gain numbers, and you can pump her to some pretty decent values, with the Protect markers, with the plus 10ks from Malkuths. So it's basically the same Hamiel. And because, you're an aggro deck, you want to have this as early as possible, even without Protect markers on turn 2, and just swing with it just to get the early pressure. And then if they kill it, that's fine, you just reanimate them with Malkuth. If not, they just sit on the board and you've just made value out of it. So this is probably the best grade 2 in the deck, and it's one that I would always play at 4 no matter what. The others, there's a flex slot there, there's some flex slots in the grade 1, but I think Amputation is the one card that's always a 4 of. Then, rounding out the grade 2s is Yathgiel. This card is just insane. It's plussing, it's filtering, it's damage checks, which you can get an extra chance of getting crits. It can hit numbers against Protect and Axel decks really easily. It's just everything you need. And it's one of the reasons that I'm not playing Bellyful meds right now, because if I need to recycle Malkuths, I can just use Scaling Angel and then Yathgiel them back. Ideally, you want your front row to be Amputation Angels, but then Yathgiel is the next best beat stick because it hits over 10k on its own, whereas Holy Angel doesn't really do much, it's just there to set up the combo. So, at the grade 2, we can then talk about the other tech option for this deck, which is Zain. I'm not a huge fan of Zain. Pretty much Amputation Angel does everything it needs to do better in terms of hitting numbers, but the one reason that you play Zain is a meta call, because what Zain does is that it's removal, which is really valuable in some specific metas. So for example, if you're up against Ghosties with Beatrice, or you're up against Luard, these decks with huge intercepts, or you're up against Yasui, who needs that grade 1 on rearguard, back row rearguard to refill its board after it multi-attacks. If your opponent has anything useful on the board that can be problematic, you can tech Zain and just have an easy option for removal, either because you can reanimate them with Malkuth, or they just don't kill themselves because you have Protect markers, and you can just go from there. So it's not immediately better than everything here, but it is in some situations, and if you find yourself in those situations a lot, then Zain can definitely be an option. Then finally we're getting to the grade 3s, and this is where we have our one-off. So as you can expect, we have our 8 Malkuths. They're kind of important for the deck. You have the base Malkuth that you need to ride this Malkuth, and then we round it all off with just the 1 Hamiel. So this deck is not very counterblast heavy at all. Yathgiel costs 1, but it refunds itself, and nothing else costs counterblast. You have the on-ride counterblast 2 from Malkuth, but you're healing 1, so it's realistically just counterblast 1, which means that you have a lot of counterblast to play with a lot of times, and so you can just use it on Hamiel. She gains a crit, she gets Sentinel Restrict. You don't get the call from damage from her first effect, but you don't really need it. She's just there to be an extra beat stick and just push a bit more damage because you're putting Protect markers on her. And it's almost like your Gavril numbers. Instead of having 2 or 3 drive checks during the main phase, where you can damage a trigger and put 10k to the Hamiel, you're just relying on the Protect marker scalings and the plus 10k from Malkuth Malak, and that's it. And she's not going to get any extra crits beyond your drive checks, but it's still that huge numbers, that guard restrict pressure. It's just a nice to have. This could easily be either of the tech options we discussed of Zain or Bellyful meds. You could adjust the ratios a bit to incorporate 2 of these or whatever. This is definitely the most flexible slot, but I just like having it there as a sort of emergency pop option. So that's the list, and what I'm going to do now is quickly explain, like I said, some of the lines of play and theories you can do with the deck. So as I said, you always want to be on this Malkuth Malak going first, or you want to ride this first no matter what, because then you can rewrite into Shin Malkuth Malak when you damage check it. And there's two main ways you have to doing this. The first one is through Malkuth Melec's second skill, the Soul Blast 1, Call 3, and deal 1 damage to yourself, which is what you're going to be doing most of the time, mainly because two reasons. One, because you're getting Protect 2s, you're going to be encouraged, as it were, to intercept with your grade 2s for massive shield value, and then you want to reanimate them that way you're not calling cards from hand to guard, that way you can save the cards in hand to actually guard with rather than calling to the board to attack with. And the second thing is that the plus 5k, it's a static effect, which means that you can use it first to call 3 things, give them 5k, and then go into the Shin Malkuth Melek and have the plus 10k apply on top of that. That way, if you've used Malkuth Melek, the units that you call that turn will have plus 15k from the two skills combined. And those numbers are really important for breaking through some decks' guard values. The other way you have of triggering Shin Malkuth Melek is through Yathgiel. This one is sometimes better because you take a card from damage to hand, and then you damage the Shin Malkuth Melek. So it's literally a free heal at that point, and it costs nothing itself because you add the card that you counterblast most of the time. So the only downside to this is that it means that you either had to replace a board from hand, or your opponent just sort of, couldn't deal your board, you didn't have to intercept, and then you just had left these front rows, like, your board was left on the front row and you didn't have to replace it to begin with. In which case, that's already an advantageous position, and then this is just, getting the free heal one is just win more. But they're both really valid options, and that's why you play both Persistence and Holy Lord, because they both set you up in such a way that you can do these effects to put the Shin Malkuth on top, and then go into the Yathgiel and confirm the heal off of the Yathgiel instead. Like I said, the other lines you play are at the grade 1, where you can control being able to get the Malkuth Melek back, because the point is, once you ride the Shin Malkuth Melek, you really want to be able to re-ride this Malkuth Melek for 2 reasons. One is for the soul. This deck is very, very, very Soul Blast heavy. And 2, it gives you an extra protect marker, and which is important because you want to get as many protect use as you can. And 3, it gives you the chance to restack the Shin Malkuths after you Soul Blast them, and then put them on top and then get a heal again, which is just insane value. Like, you can sit on Shin Malkuth the entire game after rewriting once. It's just not ideal. Like, you get your 3rd protect marker, and then you don't, you're not as pressured to rewrite the Shin Malkuth, the original Malkuths. But the fact that it's Counterblast 2 to heal 1, it just means that you're basically playing with, instead of playing on a 6 damage clock like most decks are, you're playing close to an 8 or 9 damage clock, which is actually really, really unfair when you think about it. Your opponent has to deal 9 damage to you to win the game, whereas you only have to deal 6. And the fact that, sure, you're dealing damage to yourself through these effects, but it's overall negated. And, if you're using Yathgiels to ride to Shin Malkuth, that's becoming 10 damage that they need to do because of the extra heal from there as well. So these repeated heals kind of they really add up over time, and they're what let the deck really grind it out, which is why we're playing draws and heals, because PGs are way better at grinding than Crit Sentinels. And eventually you'll get to a point where you have too many protect markers, and these amputations just can't be guarded, and then you can just go to town on your opponent. So it's really cool because everything in this deck happens in the main phase. There's unfortunately no fun battle phase things you can do with Shin Malkuth in standard right now. There's no way of rewriting Shin Malkuth during the main battle phase to get a restand on your Vanguard, which is a shame. But the fact that you have to sequence your actions so carefully during your main phase, do I play this first? Do I play Nikir first? Because if you shuffle, then you're going to lose the Shin Malkuth. You want to leave these until last so you can confirm the damage. Or you want to use these first so that you can get the damage when you reanimate with Malkuth. Or maybe you want to do Yathgiel first so that you can then make value off of the Shin Malkuth. There's a lot of this. You have to plan 3 or 4 steps in advance, all during your turn, and that's what I find really, really fun about the deck. It's not insane. It's high tier 2, low tier 1.5. It's definitely not better than Gavrel. There's a lot more moving parts. You have to see, you need to see a lot more cards. You need to see your Malkuths. You need to damage your Shin Malkuths. You need at least 1 or 2 of your setup pieces. You want the amputation to go off, and you have a lot less searching for it. You have filtering through scaling and persistence, but it's not it's not like you have multiple drive checks like you do with Gavrel. You can just add from damage to hand really easily. You only have Yathgiel to do that, and everything else relies on you either healing it out and then reanimating with Malkuth, or just filtering it with scaling and persistence in the first place. So it's pretty difficult to do, but at the same time, there's a lot more flexibility in how you plan the turn. It's not just make a Hamiel, put 5 crits on it, and laugh at your opponent as they can't guard and eat shit and die. So that's the one benefit I have to this deck, is that both players get to play more Vanguard when this deck is on the table, and I think that's what's really great about it. So yeah, like I said, that's how the deck plays. Hopefully You saw some interesting lines of play. Like I said, the two tech options are Belthor Meds and Zayn. They're both pretty good. Other options I wouldn't really recommend other than, Crit Sentinels. And Hamiel is, like I said, the flex slot. This doesn't really matter as much. You can be anything else. But the main thing core that you want is to have these Malkuth enablers, your 8 Malkuths, and Amputation Angel. And then everything else is about either repeating the Malkuth or finding the Shin Malkuth more reliably. Both of which are equally important, and I can't tell you which one's better. It's just based on your experience, how lucky you are, and your metacalls. But that's going to be it from me for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Yue will be back very soon with his content. So until then, thank you very much for watching. As always, leave a like on the video, drop a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, check us all out on Team Strictly Broken. Be sure to buy cards from strictlybrokentcg.ca, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Take care. Peace.